This is the third event in Halachic Left's learning series on Jewish reckoning with power. For those who aren't familiar with Halachic Left is a grassroots movement working to shift the conversation on Israel and Palestine in halachically observant Jewish spaces. Though, as I'll discuss in the morning, this event series is a little bit broader than that. Halachic Left is comprised of halachically observant Jews advocating for communities to oppose Jewish supremacy, support ending the Israeli military control and occupation of Gaza, the West Bank, and East Jerusalem, and work for a just and equitable future for Israelis and Palestinians. Most of Halachic Left's recent Torah writing teaching has engaged directly with the situation in Israel and Palestine. In this program, however, we're intentionally stepping back towards a broader and more abstract question that underlines so many of these conversations. Literally, how does Jewish tradition understand, justify, resist, and reckon with power? Each of the days of learning happening across the country features sessions from multiple teachers exploring different dimensions of Jewish engagement with power: textual, halachic, historical, academic, ethical. The sessions aim to open a shared conversation and provide conceptual tools that can deepen our Jewish learning and inform contemporary Jewish moral and political thinking. If you like today's learning, there's a lot more where it comes from. First, there are videos from the first two events in the series, which took place in Boston and Philadelphia, available at the Halachic Left YouTube page. The next day of learning will be taking place in Los Angeles in 2 weeks, on Sunday, May 31st. Registration and information is available on Halachic Left's website, and we will also post information in the Zoom chat here. And look out for more information soon about days of learning happening in New York and Chicago sometime in June. I should also note Halachic Left will be having its first ever Shabbaton, not too far from here at Pearlstone Retreat Center, from October 16th to 18th. So look out for information on that. If you want to get information on Halachic Left and all of these and other events, as well as a weekly Dvar Torah, please sign up for our newsletter. If you're here in person, we have a sign-up sheet to get onto the newsletter email list up front. If you're on Zoom, we will post a link in the chat. We also invite you to join the WhatsApp community. Okay, so I've spoken long enough. Now I want to hand over to our first teacher. So Rabbi Avigayil Halpern, a writer and educator focusing on queer and feminist Torah. She's a regular contributor to Jewish Currents weekly Parsha commentary, an adjunct Talmud faculty member at Hebrew College, and currently working on a book about queer nida, Jewish menstrual practice, and Jewish sexual ethics and law. She has served as a scholar in residence at the Hadassah Brandeis Institute and was recognized as one of the New York Jewish Week's 36 under 36 in 2021, and twice as a Vachtichtov She Writes Fellow, among other fellowships and awards. Rabbi Halpern writes regularly at avigayil.substack.com, and you can find out about her upcoming classes at ravigayil.com. Rabbi Avigayil Halpern.
Oh, wow. Every time I hear my own bio, I'm like, what's happening? Okay, hi. I took the call to theorize pretty seriously, and I have... Oh, you are? No, you just look like Caroline Morganti from a glance. I'm very sorry. Caroline's on Zoom. But
could you speak a little louder?
Yes! Perfect, thank you. I will speak louder, and I will also try to speak slower, which is some development work I've been doing for a long time. Okay, so my question is, as of now, in my anecdotal personal experience, Halachic Left has largely functioned as a kind of loose descriptor of a coalition of people with a lot of different ideological commitments, but a basic shared sense of wanting the conversation around Israel and Palestine to be different in communities that are, I'm going to say from in a kind of broad, loose sense. Does that sound accurate to everybody in the room?
Yes.
Great. And Halachic Left's been around for a couple of years now, and this is my one individual person's attempt at thinking through, I do not speak for Halachic Left, I'm just a guy, what does it mean when we say Halachic Left in a kind of more robust way? And should we try to mean something more robust, or is it most useful for it to be a loose descriptor of a coalition? And in particular, I'm interested in the question of what does the halachic piece do with the left piece in terms of what is the particular utility and contribution of a coalition of people who are in some way committed to halakha, and I'm going to leave committed to halakha really undefined here, but at least committed to communities that structure themselves around halacha in some stated way. What is the unique contribution of this group of people to the left? How does the halachic and the left parts interact constructively? Okay. When I was in college and I didn't do all the reading, I would sometimes write a paper that was a close reading of like the introduction. I'm sure I'm not the only one who's done that. And I want you all to know that I did do a lot of work to figure out what sources should be in this shiur, and I did not do it like that. However, we are starting with a text that is famous to some, which is the very beginning of the Shulchan Aruch. Right? Classic halachic work. Oh, it's working. Okay. I would like a volunteer to read. I've brought you all the texts that come in more than one language, in at least that language and English. If I call on you to read, you should feel invited to read in whichever of the two languages are on the source sheet. And if you want to do like a live simultaneous translation to something else, like that would be a weird choice, but we'd all be impressed. Okay. This first text, who's gonna read it for us? Aliana is.
One should strengthen themselves like a lion to get up in the morning to serve their Creator. You should get up early enough to welcome in the dawn.
Okay. What does that mean? Especially if you've encountered this text before, I'm interested in how you read it previously, and if you're just encountering it now, what's your gut instinct? What does it mean, get up like a lion to get up in the morning to serve your Creator? Sam?
So my mind does go initially to the Yeshayahu Leibovitz beloved use of this, which is that at least the way that he understands it or translates it is that it is against actually in some ways human nature or the typical order of things that one would do this, and so one has to constantly be going against one's own instincts.
Great. There's some sort of like strength of character to supersede the thing that your like kind of body or soul, like some, yes. It's a sense of like strengthening yourself to do a thing that you naturally wouldn't want to do.
Yeah, I guess my instinct when I'm reading it now is thinking that like a lion is someone who lives in a world where they're always like on guard and like they're always like pursuing something. They're always like scanning for both like potential threats but also potential praise. Like it's not like, I think you're saying like you need to be like active. Like you're not like we're not meant to be passive.
Great. You want to wake up kind of activated, ready to go, alert to everything going on around you. Whether that's mitzvah opportunities or perhaps dangers, or the combination. Yeah, go ahead.
A question I have is the moment or the time of strengthening. If you're getting up early enough to welcome the dawn, there seems to be a liminal state right there where you're perhaps fortifying yourself.
Great.
Or letting the dawn fortify you on that.
Excellent. And what are you waiting till dawn to do if you're from in this situation? You're gonna pray. Yeah. So this gives you a little bit of extra lead-in time to that. Atara.
I've always taken this super literally.
Yeah.
That like part of being a frum kid is to like wake up early in the morning, and I always feel really guilty because I'm really bad.
Yeah.
And I thought like I guess this part of the Shulchan Aruch I can't.
Great. And that's how a lot of the Achronim read this. Is like you gotta get up early and start your day. Yeah.
So I was thinking about like the topic of Jewish power, like in Jewish tradition, the lion is like kind of a symbol of Jewish power, but it's like here it's constrained by like there's like a check on the power, like you are powerful like a lion, you have to serve the Creator.
Oh, I really like that. Yeah. But you're waking up with a sense of your own power and you're directing it somewhere. Scott.
Well, I mean, the power of a lion is a predator.
Yeah.
Right? So there's something dangerous about that power if it's not serving the Creator.
Excellent. Yes. Like the power is there, As opposed to, like you were saying, you need to wake up and kind of like push yourself into that state, whereas I kind of hear you saying you have this power and the work is to wake up and guide it.
Can I also add one more?
Absolutely, you can.
There's also like parts in our text where God is described like a lion.
Great.
And so there's also like this waking up and like we're both like embodying a godliness, but also like welcoming, like greeting God, like sort of connecting with like this essential self in the morning before the chaos of the world starts.
Right, there's this quiet intermediate time to be like, how am I like God? How can I channel God? How can I imitate God? Okay, that's all beautiful. The Shulchan Aruch is, in some senses, condensing the Torah, which came before it. The Torah thinks none of the things any of us just said. And again, I want to flag, the Achronim on the Shulchan Aruch all say things that echo, or not all, but there's a lot of them, that echo all of the things that have just been said. So you were all part of a very good reception history of, this is about like getting up early, cultivating ourselves as disciplined, like how we should move, the like affect with which we should move through the world, ready to kind of face potential threats, but like be strong in our convictions, all of those kinds of things. You were all good readers. Or at least you're readers in good shared company. Okay. But the Torah, sometimes the Shulchan Aruch basically says what the Torah says, and sometimes it's a real condensation, and sometimes it's different. The Torah, though, gives us a lot more. And I would like a volunteer to read, and note, I have not even brought you the full section here. I have brought you only the beginning of this one chunk of the Torah. And Rabbi Avigayil is going to read it for us, because I'm going to pick on you.
Judah ben Tema says, "Be as strong as a leopard and swift as an eagle, fleet as a gazelle and mighty as a lion, to perform the will of your parents in heaven." I've literally never done any of those things.
That's a quote from the Gemara. That's a quote, right?
Oh, do you want?
No, that's great. This is just a quote from the Gemara. Now we're getting the Torah's gloss on this quote.
He specified 4 things concerning the service of the blessed Creator. And he began with strong as a leopard, because it's an important...
I just want to flag, namer. It's being translated as lion in one translation and leopard in another. Don't get confused, it's the same thing. Great, keep going.
Because it is an important general principle of the service of the blessed Creator, since sometimes a person desires to perform a mitzvah, but is prevented from performing it because people do mock him. Therefore, he cautioned that you should have fortitude against the mockers and not refrain from performing the mitzvah.
Okay, that's not quite what anybody said about Azkanamer, about strong, like a leopard/lion. Okay, but we're going to get some examples of what this looks like. He's like, you should do this thing like Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema said, and here's my gloss on what it means to be Azkanamer, strong like a big cat, and here's a bunch of examples of people who said similar things or did similar things. So here are the examples.
And thus, said Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai to his students, "May it be your will that the fear of heaven be upon you like the fear of flesh and blood." And so he says concerning the same subject of shame, that sometimes a person is ashamed before a person more than he is ashamed before the blessed Creator. Therefore, he warned that you should have fortitude against the mockers and not be ashamed. So did David, peace be upon him, said, "I will speak of your decrees in the presence of kings and not be ashamed." Though he was pursued and fled among the nations, he had taken strength in the Torah and learned, though they had mocked him.
So, I noticed that we have to start with the Shulchan Aruch is Kibar Ari, which is in Rabbi Avigayil, but right now we are looking more at Azkanamer, which is, those two are both in the
They're both there.
But they're
Very nice. Yes. Yes, Kibar Ari and then Azkanamer. Yes, there's this shift. And like, those are getting, the Torah is conflating those. No, you're right. Those are different. But those, which is also weird, right? Because we have in Rabbi Yehuda ben Tema, the part of the Torah that I cut, he's like, these two seem the same.
Okay.
And that's why I thought it was obvious, but it wasn't, is I actually cut that out. Yeah. Yes, thank you. He's like, why does it repeat these two things? They're slightly different, but basically, like, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm really struck by the idea that there is a physical presence that is actively trying to prevent you from performing mitzvot, and that both has an element of strength and it has an element of like social pressure or shame. And like to be a frum Jew is to resist those outside. Like, if you know everything's easy and like you're just going through life, you are not being the kind of Jew you are. That is
Great. Great. Like the fundamental discipline, per the Torah at least, is people are going to make fun of you for doing these things, and when you wake up in the morning, you've got to be ready for that.
It gets countercultural, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Being firm is countercultural. To use no language in the Torah, but I think that's what he's saying. And I'm interested in these examples, which again, in no way make it into the Shulchan Aruch. We've got two examples here. And then the Torah goes on to like specify each of the other things in this list from Yehuda ben Tema, and none of those make it into the Shulchan Aruch. We've got Kibor Ka'ari, yes. Okay. So we've got two examples. King David's a little less interesting to me. Not as like a person, but... Okay. So King David, it's a quote from Tehillim. It's like, King David says that he's going to... So King David is like, I'm gonna talk about your decrees, Torah, in front of kings. So though he was pursued and he fled among the nations, he had taken strength in his Torah and learned. So King David is strengthening against who when he's fleeing? Who's that about?
I would think it would be Shaul. He's like, you know.
I also think it's Shaul.
Yes.
Right. So what kind of person is David kind of like holding out against in his commitment to Torah and mitzvot?
A Jewish non-godly king.
Excellent. A Jewish non-godly king. That's so interesting. Right? The example here is King David. It's not like, oh, the non-Jews out there are trying to like pogrom us and we need to resist, or like this isn't like an anti-assimilation thing going on. For King David, it's very clearly like he is being pursued by the Jews in power, and the thing keeping him strong is his relationship to Torah and mitzvah. Okay, that's interesting, right? Moving right along. Okay, what's the other example? Who's the other guy?
Example of what, sorry?
Who's the other example that the Torah brings?
Yochanan ben Zakkai.
Yochanan ben Zakkai.
Yes.
So this particular quote is from Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai on his deathbed. Louder? Okay. Rabbi Yochanan, it's really echoey. Okay. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is on his deathbed and his students say, give us a bracha. And he's like, this is my bracha. So this is his deathbed bracha to his students. Right? May it be your will that the fear of heaven be upon you like the fear of flesh and blood, which the Torah is explaining as being about. Sometimes you're more ashamed, more embarrassed, more nervous in front of other people than you are in front of Hashem. But you should always be more embarrassed in front of Hashem, right? You should never be like too shy to be the only one in the room benching, to give a non-politically loaded gloss, at least ostensibly. Okay. Who's giving this? Who's Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai? I gotta call it somebody else, even though I know you know. Who's Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai? What's his deal?
Young man.
He said I wasn't gonna call him, but didn't mean to just yell. But yes, great. Eliana's gonna tell us about this now.
Someone else can have. Let's give you one more clue. Someone else want to talk about that?
Great, Lisa.
So he was the one who, as like Jerusalem was being destroyed by the Romans, and he is like, okay, if we want to survive, we need to maybe like move out of here and set up somewhere else. So he got permission from the Roman general Vespasian to let him and like some of the sages get out safely, and then he set up Yavna, which became became like the new like center of Jewish life and the birth of the Talmud and Rabbinic Judaism, yada yada yada.
Excellent. Great. If you spend time learning from Rabbi B'nai Lappi, she's got a lot of really good Torah on this that I'm not going to bring because we are time limited. But I have brought you a small bit of the very long sugya in Gittin that talks about this whole adventure that we are now going to learn. We're going to jump over this little bit of the Beit Yosef. It's there because it was interesting to me, but I knew it was aspirational when I put it on the source sheet. So, if you're looking at the translation, this is the Koren Steinsaltz translation that's on Sefaria, where bolded words are direct translations. Non-bolded words are the translator's interpolations to make it make more sense. The bold doesn't indicate more important like it normally would in every other kind of English writing. Okay, Vespasian, the Roman general here, who's then going to be the king. Great. Okay, I'd like someone to read for us. Yes.
Vespasian said to Rabbi Avigayil Halpern, I will be going to Rome to accept my new position, and I will send someone else in my place to besiege you city and wage you war against them. But before I leave, ask something of me that I can give you. Rabbi Avigayil Halpern said to him, give me Yavne and its sages, and do not destroy it, and spare the dynasty of Rabbi Avigayil, and do not kill them as if they were rebels. And lastly, give me doctors to heal Rabbi Zan. Rabbi Yosef read the following verse about him, and some say that it was Rabbi Akiva who applied the verse to Rabbi Avigayil. I am the Lord who turns wise men backwards and makes their knowledge foolish, as he should have said to him to leave the Jews alone in this. And why did Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai make this request? He maintains that Vespasian might not do that much for him, and there would not be even a small amount of salvation.
Okay. So this is the part that didn't make it into Lisa's excellent summary. Because it's not a part we pay a lot of attention to in the kind of like oral story version of the story of Yavne. So Rabbi Yochanan very famously says to Vespasian, give me Yavne and its sages, and then like spare Rabbi Gamliel and his family so we can continue to have our Torah world. Like we're not going to have Yerushalayim, but we are going to have Yavne, and that's what's going to survive. And then what do the other rabbis say to him?
You could ask for everything.
You could ask for everything. But not even, you could have asked for everything. But what's this pasuk they're bringing? It's not a pasuk about asking for everything.
Right.
It's a pasuk about how he's really done. Right? This isn't necessarily it's at least not framed by this sugya as a thoughtful disagreement between colleagues about what the right way to move forward is under oppression. They're like, that was so dumb, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. And he doesn't even respond, which we can read in two ways. Sometimes in the Gemara, when somebody gets the last word, it means they're right. But here, the anonymous voice of the Gemara explains why he's right. So even though Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai does not have a refutation in the text itself says he was being cautious. Right? If you ask for the big thing, you might not get it. Better ask for the small thing that you're more likely to get, which is a strategic question that smart people disagree about all the time. Yes, Guy.
I don't have a source for this, but I seem to recall that one of the other things he had to do was predict that Vespasian would become emperor.
That's how we got to this stage in the Sugya, yes.
Right, so there was an accommodation of Roman imperial authority that got to this point and said, oh, well, what are the implications of having asked for more, which you've had to do more accommodation? I mean, there's a lot baked into this that's not actually...
Right, it's like if you asked for more, would you have to give more in some sense? Would you be more indebted? Right, the like Roman imperial control is why we're in this story to begin with. Right? Why are we trying to get saved from Jerusalem? Why are we saving anybody from Jerusalem? Why can't we all just stay in Jerusalem where it's nice and happy and non-besieged? Right. Yeah, so.
The other thing is that the line of Rabbi Gamliel isn't just, Torah following Yavne. It is a political force.
Yes.
Which is a little different than most people around the story. Most people around the story is we don't have any political power anymore.
Right.
And we just sit in yeshiva. But he's specifically asking for a remnant of political power.
Yes, it's like retain our like core political leadership and the Torah. Or at least this particular vision of rabbinic Torah as it is being played out at this time among a lot of factions that the Gemara doesn't really want us to think about. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm also just curious, like, because, I mean, do we ever get information about, like, this Vespasian and Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's relationship before this moment? Like, is this the first time we hear about it?
I believe not. They have
So-
like
so,
something.
like,
There's almost like a lot more back. There's at least more context that I can say with confidence that there is more context than I have given you.
Yeah, but I'm like I'm interested about this and like how much their prior relationship builds on, like, you know, because it gives me to understand that this isn't the first time they've chatted about the direction things are going. And so it, you know, I wonder if, like, based on prior discussions about like what the landscape is and what's possible, you know.
My sense is that those, if they have existed, are not in
Totally fair, but it because, like, you know, Vespasian goes to Rabbi Yochanan and says, hey, I'm about to take this.
Yeah.
And it seems to be an understanding that he almost has like more power to do this for them now than he would once he becomes, like, gets a larger position. Because he doesn't say,
right, like he's just become king, and so he's just become emperor in this moment.
Right.
And so there's like this sense of like transition and liminality, and you can like grab something now that might be harder to do later.
Right. So that's what I'm wondering, like, once he actually becomes officially emperor, will he have as much power to play to do something for, I don't know, it's just,
That's it, right. And he's also going from the like general in charge of this area of the world.
Anti-Jewish spirit.
will be like more accountable to not.
So let me see what they just want me.
Yeah.
It seems relevant to make note that it says, I will send someone else to continue besieging your city and waging war against it, but ask me something that I can't give to you.
Right.
Like, I can't, I'm going to do this, ask me something I can do. Implies that you can't ask me to stop besieging.
Right.
You can't stop me in the war. I can't give you that.
Right.
But ask me something I can.
Right. And then it's interesting, right, that the objection of Rabbi Yochanan's like fellow rabbis are like, why didn't you ask for more? Yeah.
Well, there's like this is already the, I guess, some of the other context we're missing is that Rabbi Yochanan had already been smuggled out of the city in a coffin.
Yes.
It's not like,
Right, he's just dropping from the sky in front of his face.
and so like there's a sense of desperation here which seems not fully appreciated by the rest of the academy.
Great.
And also,
Great. And Rabbi Yosef and Rabbi Akiva are very different generations of sages. Right? Rabbi Akiva is basically a peer, and Rabbi Yosef is an Amora coming much later. So it's like, is this somebody reflecting, like, the stakes of even that objection? Right, the Gemara has it all in its flat Gemara time, like it's all happening at once.
Right. And even on Vespasian's end, he's sort of coming at this after the year of the three emperors, and there has been quite a political crisis in Rome for a while. And so he and his sons are capitalizing on this to solidify their own position. And so, like, it just so happens that they are in command of Jerusalem, and so they can't walk away.
Yeah.
And so it's one thing to be literally walled in starting, and it's another thing to be walled in by the army that you are commanding, which will very easily get rid of you as well as they got rid of the last three guys.
Yes. Yeah, the political stakes of this are so intense, and also I think in some ways hard to parse in terms of what's like really going on, and what does the Gemara want us to think is going on, and which one ought we care about as readers.
The context just given, and all that's been said, is, okay, here is a supreme focus on various aspects of power at the moment, at the inflection point moment, and how it's dealt with.
Yes. Yeah, Aaron, and then I'm going to move us.
Maybe it's not, I don't know how much Waddin's theory holds, but it's also kind of interesting to think about how difference here potentially was like, are we going into Galut at all versus staying? And if you think about how like all like the liturgy of Tisha B'Av and everything is about how like this all happened because of our sins. Some of these rabbis it almost sounds like we're making the argument of why didn't we just like ask to take everything back and kind of, you know, maybe.
Right, that reflects a kind of lack of accountability in certain ways.
Yeah, or it's kind of like maybe this was in our hands, and Rabbi Avigayil Halpern was like, no, this is out of our hands. We are going to Galut. How do we now continue Judaism and see this way?
Right, it's like what level of acceptance of this as divine punishment versus like politics happening in the real world that we could meaningfully intervene in. Yeah. Okay, my question for you all is, what does Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai specifically contribute to this Yitgaber Ka'ari / Az K'namer orientation that a firm person ought to have? Like, what is this saying about the posture? And it's something that I want to flag is this a posture that is, whatever this posture is it something that is cultivated by being committed to Torah and mitzvot? Or is it one that one needs to pre-cultivate to come to Torah and mitzvot with? So it's a two-step question. Like, what is it? What is the relationship of, right, why is the kind of strength that a person is cultivating relating to this mocking, and it's related to Yochanan ben Zakkai, and it's related to David HaMelech? And then, does it need to precede the Frumkeit, or does it come from the Frumkeit? Are parts of that question clear? Yeah, okay.
So, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is standing up to his colleagues, his peers, right? They are the ones who are pressuring him to do more, say more, whatever, or demand more, and he is prioritizing strategy. Now,
yeah. And in part, and this has come up in the room, like in part because, like, in some sense at least, he is perhaps more oriented to what is actually happening strategically and politically. Yeah.
Yeah, he is like part of the world in that way.
Yes.
So, like, I don't feel comfortable giving a like flat statement that says that the firm response is always to be strategic, or the firm response is always to, go for broke and be the martyr, and that I don't think that Frumkeit actually has an opinion there. I do think that Rabbinic Judaism as a whole leans towards the strategic element.
Okay,
and you're going to see that a lot. My favorite example is, when they moved the days that Jews would get married, it was because they wanted to avoid the hegemon. It wasn't because there was like something particularly valuable about getting married on a Tuesday versus on a Monday.
Mine is but like, okay.
Sure.
Yeah, Scott.
So it's not in a political context.
Great.
Right? That orientation is responding to some political, some power context around you.
Yeah.
We're not like in the land where everything is like a nice perimeter around us. We can practice from kind of the ideal Torah sense, right? And so everything has to be negotiated, and like the whole story of forming of Rabbinic Judaism is like, well, we don't say Judaism except it was all political negotiation. It wasn't just happening in some ideal world. So to your question about it kind of has to come at both stages, right? You have to be aware of that and orient yourself. And then you also have to be aware of that in the doing.
Yeah.
Right? You're never in an ideal
Great. It's just like we're always living in like a real non-ideal world, and we're always trying to make it work as best we can. Yeah. Rabbi.
I want to be careful how I say this, because to be clear, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was right tonight. I think he was right. We exist because of him. And I'm wondering if we're giving him a bit too much credit for standing up to the face of mockery for someone deep in the rabbinic world to say, just give me the line of Rabban Gamliel and give me Yavna, is actually maybe him saying, give me the peers who already I respect and respect me. Give me my society and their laws. And I think that's actually an incredibly sad thing that's happening.
Which really speaks to the factionalism that was going on at the time.
Yes. So it's not that I think he wasn't courageous, but I'm not sure he's thinking about, I don't think he's necessarily being as countercultural as we're thinking. He has picked his culture.
Right, and he's like, sustain my part that I'm already in. Yeah, you saw.
And like, some of the ways we're like looking at it right now is that the people who are mocking Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai are possibly very anti, or others who said, why do you ask for more? When there's another people who maybe the mockers in the situation, which are the people who are surrounding him in Yerushalayim at the time, the Biryonim, the people who are in the below violence, who he thinks are due to prevail.
Yeah.
And so whether you think he's standing up to people who think he didn't ask for enough, or the people who think you should be asking for anything, you should just be fighting back material, with arms, or the possible, strength of character in front of the person that is on the staging here, all of those, I think, is possible to say either he's being conciliatory, he's being weaker than any of those figures, or he's being stronger than any of those figures. And I don't have a good way of communicating any of those three questions.
Great, and I think that was a really helpful articulation of a lot of the kind of back and forth that we've been having in the last couple minutes. Great. One of the fundamental questions on the table is, should we read Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai as like a radical with a vision who knew that Judaism had to be totally changed in order to continue? I feel like correctly identified that, which like is a narrative about Yahweh that exists in certain parts of the Torah learning world. Is Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai totally folding to empire and not having enough emunah, and like he could have either they should have totally given in to whatever Hashem wanted. Like he's being too conciliatory to something, whether that's to Hashem or to power, or to imperial power as opposed to Hashem's power. But what's something that's true either way about Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai? How does he get responded to by either his peers or his much later inheritors?
I mean, they mock him.
Great.
Well,
not great. Yeah, correct.
Yeah. Well, so it sounds like what we're saying, like whether or not you agree with his decision, I think it's saying that like being a Jewish leader, like a Torah-full Jewish leader, is having being able to make decisions and choices that your own community may not be thrilled about, and having at least like that, even like being able to articulate it for yourself.
Yes, and I think that's part of why, right? The Torah doesn't say be like Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, quoting blah 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 in Gittin blah 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 Yavneh. It says be like Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, or not be like Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai exactly. Follow the advice of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai that he gives to his students, which is always fear God more than you fear people. Or put differently, do not let your fear of other people overwhelm your fear of God. Which again is parallel to David HaMelech, who's like doing the right thing even though other people are, in this case, very violently after him. Who are the other people? Jews in power. So, but something that I think I really want to highlight here is that these examples are all about Jews against Jews, right? This is not, right? This is an embarrassing story about me. My second year of college, in the summer between, I was in a shiur where somebody handed out the beginning part of the Torah, like this part of the Torah, on like a little sheet of paper, and I pinned it to the bulletin board above my bed to remind me how important it was to be like getting up and going to minyan. And that's what I thought it was about. It was like, you're in a space where like that is not the norm, and you need to like kind of push against the like standards around you. But I don't think that's what it means. I think it's much more about, at least in this context, other Jews. At least based on the examples being given, right? So what does it do for us that the first thing in the Torah is you've got to wake up and be ready for other Jews to have a problem with your commitments. And that's like the fundamental thing you've got to wake up with. Yes?
But we talk about the factionalisms that were happening at the time, and did they make a good decision choosing this faction? There was another faction at the time, which was this Jesus movement thing, right?
Good thing that didn't kick off.
Yes. Right, and that was going on at that moment.
Great.
And fast forward a couple centuries, and that Jewish word originating thing, if you believe believed them to be true,
Yes.
didn't work out so well, right? So it's like, for the Jews. So, but like, that's part of the political context that
Yeah.
we really talked about.
Yeah, and I think one of the really interesting questions is how historically aware is the Torah in bringing these examples? What level of polemicizing is he doing? My instinct is not as much polemicizing as we might enjoy him to be doing.
What's the era of the tour? Like when is the
Like
tour?
very late medieval / very early
Okay,
modern.
cool.
The sort of thing that like, if there's anybody in the room who studies this period, you can like give me the whole thing about like how you just determine periodization in history, but like the era where scholars would fight about if it's late medieval or early modern. Like around the time of the printing press. Okay. I now want to trouble this entirely.
Awesome.
No, I'm not going to do that yet. Sorry, I forgot there was one more source I wanted you to look at before we trouble it. I'm going to ask you to find a chavruta, and you're going to read this little excerpt from an article that nobody cared about. Nobody noticed it. It didn't even make a big splash. Peter Meinert's article about no longer being a two stater. It made a lot of noise. And Peter Meinert uses the frame of Yavne, in certain ways reading it through the kind of like frame that we have now troubled a little bit of Yavne as this like need to radically reshift so there can be survival and like change the paradigms we're living with. As encouraging the affiliated, vaguely Zionist-oriented Jewish community to move in a direction of supporting a single binational state. I'm not asking you to get on board with Peter Meinert's proposal for what should happen in that part of the world. What I'm asking you to do in your chavruta is to think about Meinert's use of Yavne, whether you think it is effective or persuasive, whether it is religiously helpful to you, and think about how we might integrate this with the posture of the Torah, or the posture of the Torah I am arguing is encouraging us to have. Okay, we have a wild range of experience with Torah learning and chavruta in this room. So here's what you should do in your chavruta. Number one, you read the text out loud, even if that is not how your brain best processes text. You can always say to your chavruta, hang on, I need to go back and read that again to myself. But an important part of chavruta is reading the words out loud. Then you want to get clear on lowercase m meaning, which is to say you want to agree on what you think the text is saying on a basic level. That's like if I gave you a sentence that said, the sky is blue, and your chavruta said, I think this means the sky is green, you could say, oh, where do you see that in the text? Because I see the word blue. And then hopefully you would get to a place where you think the text says the sky is blue. Then you want to do capital M meaning making, where you have a text, you both agree it says the sky is blue, you want to say, you're like, I think this means the speaker's having a great day. It's a metaphor. And then your chavruta says, I think the speaker's a meteorologist. There is no, you can each point to evidence in the text, but it is okay to push at each other and try to argue for your positions. And as part of everyone here having different experiences of chavruta, everyone in the world has a different approach to conflict. You should feel like you should push at each other, and you should feel empowered if your chavruta is pushing in a way that's making you feel like really on edge and defensive and yelled at, even though they don't mean it that way. Just like flag that for them, and you can shift the vibe of your chavruta. You are invited to do that. Like, don't be too polite because I'm asking you to trust each other that if you are feeling like it's too aggressive, you can name it and pull it back. Okay. How long do I have? How long does this share go until?
Another 20 minutes.
I have another 20 minutes! Okay, perfect. That's what I thought. Great. You're going to take about 7-ish minutes in a chavruta, but I might adjust if it seems like that's not enough time. Okay, everybody feel clear on what you're doing. This excerpt from Peter Meinert. The main question is, how is he using Yavne? How does that interact with the Torah? Okay, have fun.
traditionally held near and dear, we got rid of it, we survived. We can do that again. We can take things that we hold near and dear and let them go and move on to something else.
Great. Yavna as a kind of like ethic of release.
Yeah.
Like, you can release this thing that's not working, it'll be okay.
Yeah.
Great. Great. What are other things binaries doing with Yavna? I think that is definitely true. Yeah.
I mean, he's also saying that, like, basically, if we take his argument around Zionism, I was saying at the start of our group, like, whenever someone says the essence of Zionism, I'm always like,
yeah. He's an interesting figure on like trying to keep himself as calling as if, yeah.
Yeah, if we agree that the essence of the Jewish home, and we see the kind of temple of Judaism, the post-temple Judaism, the practice of Judaism, as like a truer, more minimalist sense of being a Jew, that really sees the essence. That's kind of his argument. It would still have the essence.
Great. It's like there's a release, but there is still also a core.
Yeah.
And it's about like successfully and correctly identifying what the core is so we can perpetuate that. And none of the rest of the garbage.
Yeah.
By which I mean the state, not Beis Hamikdash, which wasn't that. Yeah.
There's I guess maybe I take issue with the Yavna analogy here specifically because I think it relies on a sort of immediate sense of catastrophe. And I think in the last couple of years, despite everything that has gone on and all the varying reactions to events in the Middle East, it's not obvious to me that the existence of Zionism or the existence of Judaism hinges on a radical restructuring of the Jewish-Judaism relationship to Judaism.
Great.
I think some people are very happy to be apocalyptic about it, and some people are very happy to be reinforced in their particular beliefs about what Zionism means. But it is not obvious to me that this changes must come.
Great. And one of the things that's happening rhetorically in this article is by the comparison to Yavna, Weinart is arguing that the fall of the American Jewish consensus around Zionism is both inevitable and kind of comprehensive in the way that, at least mythically, the destruction of the temple was. And I say at least mythically because it was like a long period of colonial occupation in which very slowly things started to shift, and then there was one moment that they tie it to, but actually it was much longer. But mythically, 100%. Yeah, Scott.
There's something a bit deconstructive about saying, well, Yahweh was a different form of Judaism based on prayer, which didn't require being in Eretz Israel, right? They say, why would you use that to justify why we need a home in Eretz Israel? It's like, it doesn't quite follow logically. I mean, I get why he's making the argument, but he's missing one of the central features.
The portability,
the portability.
The portability and the thriving are getting conflated here.
Yes.
Yeah, Yisrael and then in the back.
Another thing that struck me is that he seems to be treating this as an actual period of rupture, revolution, or change.
Yeah.
Whereas previously the Sakai as Mishnah, you please before that very much he's not done with the idea of the temple. He's just acknowledging that he's physically prevented from using the temple.
Yeah.
He would very much like everyone to remember how it works.
Yes. Great. Which is Mishnah Rosh Hashanah, which is right before this that I jumped us over. Exactly. Right. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is very committed to the continuation of at least things that happened in the Beis Hamikdash that were core to Judaism, in his opinion.
But in arguably, he would even like it to come back.
Right.
For the reason why it's remembering.
He's not saying we as a community have moved past the need for a Beis Hamikdash, in the same way that Peter Weinart is saying we as a community have moved past the need for a consensus around Zionism. Right. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is like, I wish there was still a Beis Hamikdash. This is just how we're going to do in our like B'diavad world, what the best we can do. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there is, Weinart thinking, I think a fundamental mistake in casting, this binational state and, what have you, as some kind of new radical idea, And in the same way, he, I would say, mistakenly characterizes the Yotam Zakai's, move as a finish, whereas these ideas pre-existed, the ruptures of the time, Rabbinic Judaism, the lineage there, did not originate with Yotam Zakai. It originated much earlier, centuries earlier, and likewise by national states or just different forms of autonomy, predated statehood. What this demonstrates to me is that perhaps on some level, Byron's trying to preserve his attachment to Zionism and his understanding thereof, but it's often assumed, not just by him, but throughout the entire Jewish community, that presence of the Zionist state is the default position, and breaking away from that stage, where in fact it is quite the opposite.
Okay. There's a lot of hands. I have one response to that, and then I'm going to call on Sam, and then I'm going to give us a couple more sources. And then I'm going to wrap this up because I'm watching the time. So I think one of the things about the broader article is that it really traces the kind of history of binationalism, specifically in Israel-Palestine, as a really long, deep history. And I actually think that your point there is illuminating the ways in which a richer read of what's going on with Yavne would have made the article more interesting. Right? Because in some ways in Yavne is about this is a moment where the rabbinic movement that had been developing for a long time is now the appropriate, necessary response, and it's becoming clear the advantages of this way of doing it, as opposed to all of the other factions. In some ways, binationalism is very parallel to that. It's okay, now there's some critical movement around it. Okay, Sam, and then I'm gonna give us some more texts.
Yeah. So I guess I'm also thinking about, he doesn't seem to have a lot of kind of reflexive account of the ways in which the rabbis were trying to replace the priestly class.
Yes.
Right? I mean, there's a real elitism to, this is my own kind of maybe, view of kind of, not to replace the rabbinic class of today, with a kind of academic counter-hegemon or something. But I will say that there doesn't seem to be an account this is still how countercultural is it that we're now just recreating a new caste, a new caste system of rabbinic elites? Is that really what we want? I don't know.
Yeah, great. Which I think I'm forgetting who it was, but I believe it was on this side of the room. I think it was Yishmael pointed out that the whole thing is preserving not just political power structures in addition to yes.
So I was also thinking about the elitism component, and for better and very much for worse, the elements of Judaism that are actually accessible to most diaspora Jews have been Israel and the Holocaust, right? Those are the ones that don't require you to learn Hebrew, ironically. Those are the ones that don't require you to invest a ton of time and money into Judaism. Those are the ones that are offered you for free to go to a trip after 10 days and give Holocaust memorials in whatever in every single city. And if Peter Barnard is suggesting that that is no longer going to play the same role in what it means to be a Jew, are we just saying, okay, Judaism is for elites who have the ability to study intensely, have the ability to, engage with Hebrew texts on your own instead of how Judaism has been made accessible to everybody.
Great. So I'm going to use that to transition us. Can you hold that for a minute? I have total faith it's going to be relevant. So the next two sources from Mira Wasserman and Sarah Zager are essentially a back and forth about in Wasserman's article, the practice of learning Gemara, but I will extend that to Torah and mitzvot, even though she is writing in a scholarly register and I don't think would say Torah and mitzvot in this context. Does it shape us as people? Wasserman is arguing, fundamentally, yes. Learning Gemara in particular is a practice that can make us more careful readers of the other, more attentive, more generous. Zager, my friend Sarah, says that she does a very interesting thing where she reads some of Mira Wasserman's public writing for a lay audience and says, but you're doing ethics totally differently there. And kind of points out that more than any theory about how we ought to be using Torah, Torah is being used in certain ways, and any account of how we use Torah, and I'm going to broaden that to Torah, to a life of Torah and mitzvot, needs to account for what actual people are doing and how actual people are using these texts. To that end, I'm going to close with a piece from Adrienne Maree Brown. She quotes someone named Grace here. That's her mentor, Grace Lee Boggs, who passed away a few years ago and was a major leader in left movements. And I would like someone to read this. I think this is one of my favorite ideas of Adrienne Maree Brown that I carry a lot. Yes?
From Emergent Strategy by Adrienne Maree Brown. What we practice at the small scale sets the patterns for the whole system. Grace articulated it in what might be the most useful in my life. Transform yourself to transform the world. This doesn't mean to get lost in the self, but rather to see our own lives and work and relationships as a front line. A first place we can practice justice, liberation, and alignment with each other and the planet. When we speak of systematic change, we need to be fractal. Fractals, a way to speak of the patterns we see, move from the micro to the macro level. Same spirals and seashells can be found in the shapes of galaxies. We must create patterns that cycle upwards. We are microsystems. We each hold contradictions. My shell of nails versus my desire that no one do the toxic work of nail painting. My family travel versus my desire not to use fossil fuels, etc. Our friendships and relationships are systems. Our communities are systems. Let us practice upwards.
Okay. So here's why I put this on this source sheet. We can talk all we want about the kinds of people that being from ought to make us, and even the ways that fromkeit ought to strengthen us to do necessary work in the world. But the facts on the ground are that too many from people are doing really bad things, and halacha is more often than not being used as a tool of the state to do genocide. And I think the key work of, therefore, Halachic Left, this is where I'm making an argumentative claim and then ending the share immediately so you can't push back. I'm proposing this. This is a proposal coming from just me, not Halachic Left as an organization, that it is actually necessary to engage with how we are doing halacha and what kinds of communities halachic communities are internally, and how much halachic communities are actually treating people in ways that are liberatory and that are creating new horizons for how we can move forward and live in the world. It can't just be that you show up to a regular Orthodox shul where all of the class dynamics remain in place, all of the gender dynamics remain in place, etc., but that shul has now hung a Palestinian flag outside. That is not what I think Halachic Left ought to be doing. And I think that Halachic Left as a movement will be much more successful if we engage with what is happening with the halachic part, and how is halacha actually shaping the ways that we move forward, and the communities we are building in the communities we are in addition to trying to move communities that exist in a certain way around halacha to be more pro-Palestine. And that's my pitch. All right, only 3 minutes over.